Welcome, adventurers, to the Dangers and Dragons podcast. Ready for another week of addictive stories and epic quests? We've got a truly crazy tale lined up for you this week with some legendary characters you won't soon forget.
Yeah, this one's a real doozy. Buckle up because we're going deep into a story of betrayal, brutal choices, and a hero. Or maybe anti-hero who's paying a pretty hefty price for his actions.
So tell me, what's the setup here? What dark and dangerous world are we jumping into today?
Well, imagine a world where loyalty is constantly tested, and every decision could mean life or death. That's the backdrop for this week's story, which centers around a guy named Henrik. He's a former member of this tight-knit group called the Wolves, but now he's known by a much darker name, the Kinslayer.
Oh, wow, Kinslayer, that's heavy. Right off the bat, you know this guy's made some seriously tough choices. What led him down such a brutal path?
Well, the story really kicks off with Henrik facing an absolutely gut-wrenching situation. His daughter is deathly ill. The healer's given her a bleak prognosis. You can practically feel Henrik's desperation, his terror, as he hears his daughter's fevered cries.
I can only imagine. As a parent, I don't even want to think about facing that kind of fear. But what could he do? Was he really just supposed to accept his daughter's fate?
That's the thing. Henrik isn't the kind of guy who just sits back and lets fate take its course. He's a man of action, a warrior. And in this moment of pure desperation, he makes a choice. A truly terrible choice.
He makes a deal with the devil, right? Or at least the closest thing this world has to one.
You got it. He turns to the Emperor, a figure shrouded in this aura of power and menace. The story describes the Emperor's offer as a blunt kind of order. Basically, Henrik offers his allegiance, his sword, and even more chillingly, the identities of his former brothers in the Wolves in exchange for his daughter's life.
Talk about a rock in a hard place. On the one hand, his daughter, his own flesh and blood. On the other, the brotherhood he's sworn to protect. So what happens? How do the wolves react to this ultimate betrayal?
Oh, their reaction is immediate and brutal. Traitor, they howl. But there's a line that really struck me, where Henrik's perspective on this whole situation kind of throws everything into sharp relief. He says, "The word was hollow against my daughter's first healthy smile in weeks."
Wow. I mean, it's hard to argue with that, isn't it? When faced with the very real, tangible well-being of his child, all those abstract notions of brotherhood and loyalty just kind of fade away.
Exactly. It raises some really interesting questions about what drives our actions, what happens when those deep-seated moral frameworks we have get put under this immense pressure. Does a father's love justify such a devastating betrayal?
I guess that's for each listener to decide. But the story doesn't end there, does it? Henrik's choice sets off a whole chain of events.
It does, and it gets pretty dark. So he becomes this hunter of his former comrades, his brothers in arms. But the story emphasizes that it's not fueled by vengeance or hatred. It's something much colder, a more desperate need, a chilling kind of duty.
Duty to his daughter, to the bargain he struck with the Emperor, or is it something else entirely?
That's the question, isn't it? Maybe it's all of the above. But there's this clear sense of internal conflict. You get glimpses of the emotional toll it's taking on him, the silence after each kill, the hollowness echoing their cries. It's heartbreaking, really.
This is where the story gets interesting for me, though. As Henrik becomes this legendary figure, the Kinslayer, it attracts all these other unsavory characters. Bandit kings, warlords, they all see an opportunity in the chaos he's created.
Right. They offer him deals, sanctuary, a chance to escape the life he's built, but he rejects them all. He says, "Redemption isn't earned through clever bargains, but in blood, sweat, and the ashes of the past I torched." It's like he knows he can't just weasel his way out of this mess he's made.
Yeah, no shortcuts to absolution. But what about the wolves? How are they holding up under this relentless pressure from their former brother?
Well, the story shows how they're changing, too. They were this defiant brotherhood, but now they're more like cornered beasts, desperate and fueled by rage. And each time Henrik confronts one of them, he doesn't see pure hatred. Instead, he sees this bone-deep weariness that mirrors his own.
Wow, that's a really powerful image. It's like they're both trapped in this cycle of pain and destruction, unable to break free. But is there anyone who manages to reach Henrik, to remind him of the man he once was?
There's this one scene with a wolf named Eric that just wrecked me. Eric wasn't a leader or anything, but he'd shared lighter moments with Henrik. He'd even shown kindness to Henrik's daughter. And when they face off, Eric's reaction isn't anger or pleading. It's this warrior's salute, a flicker of the kinship Henrik had shattered.
Man, I bet that was a gut punch. I can't imagine how Henrik must have felt in that moment.
Yeah, the story says it was there, standing over Eric's body, that something inside Henrik broke. Not from guilt, but from this terrible realization that even if he killed every last wolf, it wouldn't bring back the life he'd bartered away. It's like all the justification he built up just crumbled away.
So even though he'd fulfilled his part of the bargain, the wolves were gone, his daughter was safe, he still couldn't find peace.
Nope, not at all. His daughter was thriving, oblivious to the blood that had bought her smiles. But for Henrik, each sign of her happiness just deepened his internal debt. It's tragic, really. He's trapped in this gilded cage of his own making.
And it all culminates in this chilling self-awareness. The most dangerous beast I stalk is myself.
That's a pretty heavy line to end on.
It is. It perfectly captures the tragedy of Henrik's journey. He thought that eliminating the external threat, the wolves, would bring him some kind of peace. But in the end, he realizes that his true battle is internal. It's his constant fight against his own guilt and the irreversible nature of his choices. He's become the Kinslayer, not just in name, but in his very soul. So he's left with this haunting question. Can he ever find redemption? Can he ever escape the shadow of his past?
He believes, maybe foolishly, that forgiveness won't come through surrender, but through more violence. He thinks that with each life he takes, his sins might lessen, even just a little. It's a desperate, tragic, and probably futile hope, but it shows the depth of his torment, the lasting scars of his betrayal.
And that's where the story leaves us, with Henrik, the Kinslayer, forever haunted by his choices. So listeners, as you've journeyed with us through this tale of betrayal, sacrifice, and the elusive possibility of redemption, what are your thoughts on Henrik? Is he a tragic figure driven by love, or a cold-blooded betrayer who deserves his fate?
Think about the weight of his bargain. Was it justifiable? And what does it truly mean to be a Kinslayer in a world where survival often demands impossible choices?
Remember that haunting line? The most dangerous beast I stalk is myself. It speaks volumes about the psychological toll of Henrik's actions.
And consider the ending. Does Henrik's understanding that his daughter's happiness came at the cost of his own peace offer any glimmer of hope? Or is he forever trapped in this cycle of violence and regret?
We hope this exploration of Bloodbound has sparked your imagination and maybe even raised some questions about the darker shades of heroism and the true cost of desperation. Don't forget to rate and follow the Dangers and Dragons podcast for more epic tales and legendary adventures. We'll see you next week for another thrilling dive into the world of fantasy and danger.